Phew, okay. You weren't kidding about wanting a deep dive this time, huh? A sealed federal indictment against Mayor Adams himself. You really know how to pick him.
Yeah, it's a big one for sure. And, while we always avoid jumping to conclusions right off the bat, important to remember an indictment is just the first step in a legal process, but still the accusations here are pretty eye-opening to say the least.
Yeah, no kidding. So let's unpack this thing. First of all, this indictment, it covers nearly a decade, even before Adams became mayor, right?
Going way back.
So what's the overarching theme here? I mean, what are they actually accusing him of?
So in a nutshell, the indictment alleges that Adams was basically engaged in this pattern of seeking and accepting what they call improper valuable benefits in exchange for, favorable treatment. Essentially, it's a quid pro quo situation. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
Okay, and improper valuable benefits in this case means cause the indictment. It mentions some pretty lavish trips, fancy hotels, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, we're talking free first-class travel on Turkish Airlines, stays in luxury hotels. There's even a mention of something called the Bentley Suite at the St. Regis Istanbul, which, let me tell you from experience, does not come cheap. But it's crucial to understand the why behind these alleged gifts.
Right, because a free trip is one thing, but if there are strings attached, if it's tied to, some kind of official favor, then obviously that's a whole different ballgame.
Exactly. It's not about whether or not he enjoyed the perks, right? It's the implication that these weren't just random acts of generosity, like someone wasn't just being nice. It suggests they were strategically designed to curry favor with Adams and potentially influence his decisions and actions as a public official.
So it's about more than just the optics of a politician, enjoying the high life on someone else's dime.
Right. It's about whether those actions created conflicts of interest and ultimately compromise his ability to serve the public good above personal gain.
Okay, so it's not just about fancy trips, though, right? There are some serious allegations related to campaign finance violations in here, specifically this straw donor scheme. Can you help unpack that for us? What is a straw donor in the first place, and why is it such a big deal?
Sure. So imagine someone wants to illegally funnel a large sum of money to a political campaign, right? Maybe exceeding those legal limits or hiding the true source of the funds. They might use a straw donor, someone who agrees to act as a front, basically making contributions in their own name when the money actually belongs to someone else.
Ah, so it's like a disguise, creating this illusion of grassroots support when it's really coming from a hidden hand. And the indictment is saying that Adams was involved in this.
That's right. And the implications are huge. We have campaign finance laws to ensure transparency and prevent, any one person or entity from exerting too much influence on elections. And the indictment specifically points to the Adams staffer, a former volunteer at Brooklyn Borough Hall, who later became a paid staff member in the mayor's office as a key player in allegedly coordinating these straw donations.
And they're saying this wasn't just a one-off thing, right? They're claiming Adams used this scheme throughout his mayoral campaigns, potentially even impacting his eligibility for the city's matching funds program. So for those of us who don't spend all day thinking about campaign finance, what's the significance of that?
Yeah, so the matching funds program is designed to level the playing field a bit in local elections. Basically, it amplifies the impact of those small dollar donations from everyday New Yorkers by matching them with public funds. It's meant to give, regular people a bigger voice.
So if someone is using straw donors to illegally inflate their campaign coffers, they're essentially cheating the system and drowning out those voices, right?
That's exactly it. The indictment suggests that by allegedly engaging in this scheme, Adams may have improperly benefited from public funds, giving him an unfair advantage over opponents and really undermining the whole, the spirit of fair elections.
Yeah, it's like you said, this isn't just about one politician or, some fancy hotel rooms. These accusations get at something much bigger.
Exactly. And it gets even more unsettling when you look at the allegations surrounding what they call the Turkish house incident. This is where things move beyond campaign finance and into something that could have directly impacted the safety of New Yorkers.
Right. This is the part with the Turkish consulate building. What exactly went down there?
So the Turkish consulate was in the process of constructing this new skyscraper, 36 stories, right here in the city. They called it the Turkish house. And they were really eager to unveil it, with all the fanfare during this upcoming visit by Turkey's president. But there was a problem. The SDNY refused to issue what's called a temporary certificate of occupancy, a TCO.
And that's because of safety concerns.
Exactly. The indictment details a whole list of fire safety violations that needed to be addressed before the building could be legally occupied. And that's when, according to the indictment, Adams stepped in.
Allegedly pressuring the FDNY to back down.
That's what the indictment claims. It describes, this intense pressure being placed on the FDNY commissioner, and even alleges threats of job loss if the fire prevention chief didn't comply.
Yeah.
And, as we have to keep in mind, overlooking fire safety regulations in a skyscraper, that's not some bureaucratic technicality, right? We're talking about putting lives at risk.
Okay, so in exchange for allegedly leaning on the FDNY, what did Adams supposedly get out of it? More of those valuable benefits we talked about earlier.
According to the indictment, yes. It specifically mentions continued luxury travel benefits provided by the Turkish official. And then there's this other layer that I found particularly troubling, the whole alleged cover-up.
Oh, right. The indictment does mention something about deleted messages and even a missing phone. Kind of sounds like something out of House of Cards, honestly.
It certainly raises questions about what steps were allegedly taken to conceal these dealings. And again, it's important to remember we're not just talking about the actions of one individual here. These accusations suggest a broader attempt to obstruct justice and prevent accountability.
So let me get this straight. We're talking potential abuse of power, campaign finance violations, even a disregard for public safety. And all of this is allegedly tied to these dealings with Turkish officials and business people.
And it's important to remember, while the indictment focuses on the actions of individuals, if these allegations are true, it paints a pretty troubling picture, right? Like how influence can be wielded behind the scenes, potentially compromising the integrity of, our city's institutions.
It's a lot to process. Makes you wonder, how common is this kind of thing in politics? And even if they prove these specific allegations, does this case even scratch the surface?
It's a question worth asking for sure. This whole thing really highlights a crucial point. Transparency and accountability, those are essential for maintaining public trust. Because it's that trust that erodes when stuff like this comes to light, whether or not it leads to actual convictions.
And that lack of trust can have some serious ripple effects too, right? It can make people cynical, disillusioned, less likely to engage in the political process at all.
Absolutely. Creates this sense that the system is rigged, that the people in power are playing by a different set of rules. And that is a dangerous road to go down for any democracy.
So where do we go from here? We have this indictment, which is just the beginning of what could be a very lengthy legal process. What should we be paying attention to as this case moves forward?
Well, first and foremost, we have to keep in mind that these are just allegations at this point. Adams deserves due process, and it will ultimately be up to the courts to determine, guilt or innocence. But regardless of the legal outcome, I think this case raises some really important questions, right? About the role of money and influence in politics, about the effectiveness of our current campaign finance regulations, about the importance of ethical leadership at all levels of government.
It's like you said earlier, knowledge is power. The more we understand about how these systems operate, where the vulnerabilities are, the better equipped we are to actually demand better.
100%. Stay informed, ask the tough questions, and hold our elected officials accountable. Because at the end of the day, the power to shape our city, to ensure that the system is fair and just, it rests with us, the people.
That's a great note to end on. If you're feeling fired up and ready to dive deeper into this case and all the issues it raises, head over to our show notes. We'll be keeping you updated on all the latest developments and providing resources so you can do your own digging. Until next time, thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive, where we take your curiosity and turn it into a deep dive into the story shaping our world.